Hey everybody, I'm here today with a simple driving test tip, and the tip is to not assume that you failed. I know that you're probably thinking, this is so common sense, Mike, why would you make a video about this? But I've met more than a handful of people that have literally failed the driving test because they've assumed that they've already failed. Now, there would be a few reasons that you might assume that you failed, but the main reasons are that, number one, you've made a few errors that you've noticed, and number two, you're basing your assumption on the driving examiner's response or words or reaction or anything like that. So the first part, if you make a mistake on the driving test, you might make the mistake, and one option is the driving test examiner might mark down that mistake and remove points for that mistake, or you might even fail because of that mistake. But there are two other situations that will work in your favor. The other situation, the first of the other situations, is that the driving test examiner won't even notice that you've made the mistake. And believe it or not, that happens because we're all human, and just, you know, you've made the mistake because you made it, but maybe they didn't notice. The second situation that'll work in your favor is that they're gonna let it slide. And if you make a small error and they're like, oh, you did well for the rest of your maneuvers, but you made this one small error, you know, they might just let it slide. They might not, you know, remove points from it. They might sort of just give you a warning. So if you make a mistake, the rule of thumb there is don't assume that you've lost points or that you failed. Because if you assume that you failed because you made a mistake, already you're committing the error that I'm talking about. And if you assume that you've lost points enough times, then you know you've lost enough points to fail, then you're gonna be committing the same error. Now, in addition, people assume they failed sometimes because of the reaction or the response or the wording of the driving test examiner. Maybe the driving test examiner is like shaking their head looking at their paper, like huffing and puffing looking at their paper, or grabbing on, you know, because like so scared. Maybe that's just their reaction. It doesn't mean that you failed. Now, I've met people, like I said, more than a handful, so more than 5 people, okay? And I'm not gonna name who they are, obviously, but they assumed that they'd failed, so they literally just wrote off the rest of the test. Like, for the rest of the test, they had assumed that they'd failed, so they just didn't follow any of the rules. They were angry, they didn't follow any of the rules. When they finished the test, the driving test examiner said to them, what caused you to fail was not what they did before, but all of those disobeying of the rules after they had assumed that they had failed. If they had just continued doing what they were doing and didn't assume that they had failed, if they just continued playing by the rules, following the rules, driving with their best skills, showing off their best driving skills, then they would have likely passed. And what happened was they had to reschedule the test, and the test centers are always booked. You probably know this. You can't just reschedule for the next day usually. We're talking, and usually there's a waiting period, and then they're still booked. So, you know, we're talking about rescheduling weeks and months later, and then they had to take the test again, when in reality they could have had their license weeks or months earlier if they'd just not assumed that they had failed. So that's the tip for this video. Don't assume that you failed. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.